All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first virtual forum. This is new to all of us. I'm Katherine Johnson, CEO of the Richmond Hill Bryan County Chamber of Commerce. Tonight, I'm joined with our program coordinator, Terasant, and the 6 candidates running for the Bryan County Sheriff's Department or Sheriff's Office. The Richmond Hill Bryan County Chamber of Commerce is the community leader recognized for promoting business, economic, and community development, as well as public policy that balances economic prosperity with quality of life. The Chamber serves its memberships through advocacy, access to community leaders, engagement, and education. Before we begin tonight with our introductions and questions, I will review the rules for tonight's forum. Due to the format of this forum, we ask all candidates to remain muted unless it is their turn to answer. Video must be on in order for the community to see the candidates while speaking. I will unmute you when it is your turn to answer the question. We expect everyone, including the community, to behave in a professional and polite manner. If derogatory or inappropriate comments are made, I will mute or remove you from the meeting. Any questions as to the rules and format shall be addressed to me directly. All interpretations of the rule are at the sole discretion of the moderator. The order of answering questions by candidates will be done in a random order, which was done prior to this event. You each have 3 minutes to answer questions. A warning will be given at 1 minute and time's up. Turo will hold a green go sign when it is time to start, a yellow 1 minute sign when you have 1 minute remaining, and a red stop sign when your time is up. If you have questions, please raise your virtual hand or put it in the chat box to me directly. This forum will be recorded to later be posted on the Richmond Hill Bryan County Chamber YouTube page for those that could not join us live. All questions being asked tonight were received from the public. At this time, I'd like to introduce our candidates in a random order. Please introduce yourself after I call your name, including your background, what you're running on, and why you think you are right for this position. We will begin with Mike Fordham. Mike, you are unmuted.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. I'm Mike Fordham. At least I think I am after the events of the last couple of days. I'm not so sure who I am anymore. But thank you and the Chamber for hosting this event. And thank you for jumping through the hoops to get this organized. It's something I know you've been working on for the last couple of weeks. And I'd like to thank all of those who are watching and for your interest and your participation in this election process. This is a pretty important decision for Bryan County. And I hope that you would consider all of us and make your appropriate choice. A little bit about me that you may not know. My military career began in 1976 when I joined the United States Marine Corps. Upon graduating from high school, I went to Parris Island, South Carolina, a lovely resort site there. And I began my law enforcement career in 1978 when I got out of the Marine Corps and joined the East Dublin Police Department. Through the years, and I've been doing this for about 45 years now, I've been assigned to many command staff and command positions. The agency that I retired from, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, had me serve in many different positions. And when I left and retired, I was working in the director's office on the command staff and was involved in all aspects of the running of the GBI, which has 3 divisions: the Georgia Crime Information Center, the Division of Forensic Sciences, and the Investigative Division. I wasn't responsible for I wasn't in charge of anything, but I was responsible for everything the director kind of threw my way. So I've had a lot of experience in budgets and personnel issues and running a large organization. In the military, I served at command staff positions and command positions. Most 2 recent positions was battalion commander and then the executive officer for the 48th Infantry Brigade. Served multiple tours of duty in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, Doug, you're unmuted.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'd like to thank Catherine, and as well, I'd like to thank the Chamber. My military career started in 1983 when I went in the Army Reserve. I went in, I enjoyed it. I learned much about myself and much about discipline. I moved down to the Savannah area in 1989, and I began my career in management at that point. During that time, I was in charge of budgeting, personnel issues, accounts receivable, accounts payable, things of that nature, logistics. From there, I went into the fire industry. I went to Southside Fire Department, which now is Chatham Fire. I rose through the ranks. I became the fire chief of 4 stations with about 80 personnel. I come from a family of law enforcement and firefighters. My entire family is in. At that point, I really wanted to serve our community more and better. I was living in Richmond Hill at that time. And so I wanted to join the police force, which I did. I rose through the ranks of the Richmond Hill Police Department to become the CID Division Commander back in, I believe, 2012. My career with them was about 15 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a police officer. I enjoyed serving our community, and I look forward to, should I be elected as your next sheriff, to serving our community. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Did that work?
We're on. Thanks, Keith.
All right, so I'm Keith Welch. I'm from the area. I grew up in Savannah, and I married my high school sweetheart, Amanda Welch, who's actually one of the local vets here in Richmond Hill. I'm currently working for the Richmond Hill Police Department as a detective and enjoying my work that I'm doing there. For those of you that don't know, I'm actually an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When I was younger, I served a 2-year mission, 2-year church service mission for the church, and learned a lot of good things and met a lot of good people. When I was serving my church service mission, I actually served it down in Brazil, and that's really what kind of made it kind of interesting. So I picked up the language of Portuguese. Very interesting and very fun to do. One thing that I'm doing, and the reason why I'm doing this, running for sheriff, is I want to establish community outreach and involvement for the sheriff's office. I really want to improve the intergovernmental relations and cooperations that we see working with the different agencies. And one of my goals is actually to work to modernize and actually certify the sheriff's office. That's a little bit about me.
You have 1 more minute, Keith, if you want to use it. You don't have to, but
You do?
you sure do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we will move to Mark Crow.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Catherine, and the Chamber for hosting this event. I'm Mark Crow. Have been married to Becky Crow for about 30 years. I have 3 wonderful children and 3 great, wonderful grandchildren. I started my career in law enforcement in '97, but before that, I began working in public service in Pembroke with the Bryan County / Pembroke Fire Department in 1986 when I was still in high school. Moved over to EMS, then came over to law enforcement, and have served wore many different hats in the law enforcement area of the sheriff's department and the police department. Started in patrol, moved up to drug interdiction, traffic work. Then I ran the undercover drug operations for a while, and then I became the chief of police over in Pembroke for a period of 4 years. And my family's been in Bryan County for almost 200 years, and I look forward to serving as the next sheriff of Bryan County.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Al, you are unmuted.
Good afternoon. thank everyone for coming out and being a part of this question and answer section. Ms. Catherine, Ms. Turrent, we appreciate you ladies in the chamber for the awesome job you always do. I really have missed the community because everybody know I'm a people person. I like to get out and be amongst the people, but COVID-19 has really stymied that. But just tonight to be able to kind of talk to everyone and get my message out that I am very passionate about becoming the next sheriff of Bryan County, and only for one reason, and that's to help its citizens. I'm a lifelong resident of Bryan County. Of course, I moved throughout the state for learning purposes more than anything, and working and serving our state. But I also, I'm a former deputy of the Bryan County Sheriff's Department in 1985 under Sheriff Harry Williamson, and a deputy under Sheriff Tim Page in 1987. And both of those times I served at North Bryan and South Bryan. And the one thing as sheriff, I would like to come in and make sure we make it a cohesive, not North or South Bryan, but Bryan County. I will serve the citizens of Bryan County zealously. I've never had an energy crisis. And my goal is to get our guys and girls up to state standards and make sure they are always know that they're working in a non-toxic work environment, and for someone who care about its employees, the victims in this county, and also the citizens first. And that's who I am. And thank you for my, and I will talk about a little bit about my career in GBI. I did serve as assistant special agent in charge of the polygraph unit. I worked undercover drug agent. I was smuggling, worked out of the smuggling office. So I have a vast knowledge of drug experience and have some great ideas of how to work on drugs in Bryan County. So with my background, I tend to bring that forward and be your next sheriff. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Al. Mike, you are unmuted.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you. Fellow candidates, honored voters. I'm Mike Maxwell, and I'm running for sheriff. I grew up in a small upstate New York town, graduated at the age of 18, and joined the Army. I was a member of the elite 82nd Airborne Division. Once I left the Army, I became a demolition supervisor. Upon leaving that, I moved to, to the Savannah area and started a small business. At the same time, I was doing some security work. I met my wife, moved to Richmond Hill, where we raised 4 children and 1 grandchildren. It was when I moved to Richmond Hill, I decided to go to the police academy. And at that time, I was hired by the Bryan County Sheriff's Office, where I had been here for 24 straight years, and I'm proud of that. Since I've lived in Richmond Hill, we go to the St. Anne's Church. We're very active in our church. We have been very involved in our community, such as the rec center and Pay It Forward and different charities. I'm running for sheriff because I care about this community. It's where I raise my kids. It's where I call home. I'm running to serve you, the people of Bryan County, because the community is important to me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will now move into our first question. What is the #1 strength, #1 weakness, #1 opportunity, and #1 threat you see for the Bryan County Sheriff's Office, and how would you encounter each of those? The first to answer this question is Mike Maxwell. So I will unmute you again, and you are ready to go.
Thank you. Catherine, our #1 strength are the people who come to work every day, are dedicated professional employees of the Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And to them, I say thank you for your hard work and effort. I believe our weakness has been over the years, recruiting and retention. And we have a great opportunity for recruiting. Of course, we can go to the police, the local police academy, and we can go from local agencies. But I feel that we should harness the veterans. Who else? Who understands wearing a uniform and the professionalism that's required to become a law enforcement officer? I think we should definitely hire veterans. On the retention side, we have to have better pay. We have to modernize the equipment. We have to provide career paths for our employees, and at the same time, have better training. Now, how do we get there? I believe that office accreditation is the best pathway to building a bedrock of professional policies and procedures that as our county grows is necessary. Why is that? Once a year, you're audited. It'll tell the sheriff what he's doing well and what he's doing good. And as a good leader and as a sheriff, he should always take what he's not doing well and improve upon those. My goal is to make the Bryan County Sheriff's Office a flagship of employment. I believe office accreditation will also bring transparency. And I also intend to have a Sheriff's Advisory Committee, which will be comprised of local clergy, local citizens, and business leaders. What better way to solicit ideas from our local leaders and to have an open and honest conversation with them? We live in a community together. We should solve our problems together. And that's my goal as a community-oriented sheriff. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mike. All right, Doug, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Catherine. The number one strength of the Bryan County Sheriff's Office is definitely it's the people. It's the employees, it's the civilians, it's the deputies, the jailers, everyone involved. They're the number one resource, and I believe they're definitely the most important. I want to keep our great employees that we have. We have awesome deputies, jailers, 911 dispatchers. So retention is very important to me, and we definitely need to keep those individuals. State certification also plays a major role for us. State certification is basically, if you didn't know what it was, it's accepted standards and the best practices. By no means are we going to get there overnight to get there. It will take some time definitely to do that. It's a long process, but it's a good process, and it's something that the Sheriff's Department needs. In regards to the weakness, no, I'm not going to find fault or weakness with the sheriff or the existing Bryan County Sheriff's Office. There's no reason to do so. It accomplishes nothing. I'm all about being positive. There is no, I mean, every company has a weakness. Every fire department, law enforcement, everyone has a weakness. I just choose not to go there. I don't think this is the place to do that. I believe our greatest opportunity is to build a safer, happier, and healthier Bryan County. As I had mentioned earlier in some of our videos about training and working very closely with the other law enforcement agencies, fire, EMS, I believe that the community needs to come together. And that's something, should I be sheriff, that we will definitely do. We will all work together as one. Programs that will work with the Sheriff's Department, the Richmond Hill Police Department, and also the fire and EMS. I also believe that we will have quarterly meetings with community leaders, church leaders, business owners. I believe it's very important that the community is involved in how the Sheriff's Department is run. If we don't know what's going on in the community, we can't do our own policing. I firmly believe that we all need to be a part of it to move the Sheriff's Department forward. If we don't do that, then we're not going to be moving forward at all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Mark, you are unmuted.
Okay. This might sound a little strange. It's going to be a little outside of what a normal answer would be, but I think a strength for the new sheriff coming in 2021 is going to be a good slate of commissioners who are ready to stand behind the next sheriff to bring the Bryan County Sheriff's Department into the 21st century, into with better equipment and better pay. You see what happened with the Bryan County EMS and the fire when you ask for help. You know, they've built a real nice facility. They have some real nice fire trucks, some real nice ambulances, some good people, and so I think that's going to be a good strength coming into 2021. The weakness, of course, is as Mike mentioned, the retention. that is a weakness of ours. And what I plan to do there, hopefully, is there are a few cliques in the sheriff's department. Sometimes they cause some good people to go different ways, and I think we need to dismantle those cliques, get those out of the way, and I plan to bring in some good professional leadership, promote some folks that need to be promoted, and hopefully start a good field training program. And you know, just that field training program is what makes an officer um, better, the best they can be. So training new officers to become great officers is what I look forward to doing. The number one thing I think the opportunity here is to move the sheriff's department into a different direction. In 2021, whoever the new sheriff is, going to have a lot of people behind them, go in a different direction maybe, and the leadership of the county would be behind them. Hopefully, the business leaders, the community, make the department a great department that can be proud of. You know, citizens can be proud of. And I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to regain the trust of the people and how to do that. And so I hope to engage the community and bring some people out of the community into the sheriff's department for advisement and things like that. And hopefully we can get that trust rebuilt and move the department in a good direction.
Thank you, Mark. Mike Fordham, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for the question. One of the strengths that with any organization is its people, and I concur with a couple of the other candidates running for sheriff. People are what make the organization, and we have to look after those folks who, especially in law enforcement and the military, these people have taken up the mantle to serve their community. And so I had the opportunity to work at your sheriff's office for about 7 years, and I can tell you there's some great employees there. And there are some employees that want to lean forward and see the agency become a better agency. One of the weaknesses I see, and it's not just for our sheriff's office, I kind of have a broader view of law enforcement in general, is training. You know, this 2 years ago, the state of Georgia reached the great goal of becoming 50th in the nation on the number of hours required to become a certified police officer. To me, that's unacceptable. I spent 7 or 8 years in the GBI training unit, and that was my function, was to facilitate training at the training unit. In 2020 and the next decade, training and education is just a must-have for law enforcement and the job that we have to do on a daily basis. Another thing along that line is a weakness that I want to address. Is I can't have a lot of influence on the mandatory training requirements to become certified, but we can certainly increase the in-service training hours. Right now it's at 20 hours a year to maintain an officer certification. Again, in 2020 and beyond, everyone sees the news, and it's just important to have a trained force and trained personnel, support staff in the jail and in all areas to represent our community, because that uniformed officer out there on patrol, they're the most visible representation of Bryan County. They may not see the county commissioner, they may not see the sheriff, but that patrol car and that uniformed patrol officer really represents our county government. So it's important to have professionals and trained professionals out there doing that job. An opportunity and a challenge I see is funding. I think we can increase the funding stream by requesting and providing our county commissioners with a good budget that is fact-based and data-driven. One of the things I've looked at is, in many law enforcement agencies across the country have a 501c3 foundation, where it's a private public entity where corporations can buy equipment for a local law enforcement agency, for your sheriff's office. We've got enough corporations here in Bryan County to do that. And it's a win-win situation. They get the opportunity to get some skin in the game and support their sheriff's office. It relieves the tax burden on our citizens So those are some areas I'd like to look at.
Thank you, Mike. Al, you are unmuted.
I'm up.
You are up. Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you. Yes, as everyone pretty much said, the people of the agency is the true strength of what we do every day. But as sheriff, I won't talk about doing that. I will show that I'm the strength of those employees. I will be there to make sure they have a non-toxic work environment, that respect goes up the chain of command as well as come down the chain of command. Know that I truly have an open door policy that works. Those are the strengths that you must talk about and believe it when you say it. The other strength of the sheriff's department is the current infrastructure. It's there, but we must build on to it. And I want to thank those that come before me for the work to put the sheriff's department, because I've worked with a lot of sheriff's departments that are in much worse shape infrastructurally. But the infrastructure is there, and me as the next sheriff must come in and continue to build on that through finding revenue streams, to not just depend on the commissioners to expend, for them to find ways to budget our monies. So those are strengths that we have currently in this county. The weakness I see is lack of community trust. We as law enforcement have earned that. And it's going to be incumbent upon me that I get out and fix that. As sheriff, you can't expect the people to trust your officers when you don't hold those officers accountable. And one thing is, sheriff, I will hold my people accountable, but most of all, I will hold myself accountable. And another weakness is the county being split. Again, I say that causes that, make sure resources may go up, but we must make sure both ends of the county are properly served and served in a professional manner. But that weakness, I will, as sheriff, will make a strength. As it relates to opportunity, this county is awesome. We have a lot of industry that has moved in, and thanks to the chamber for working and doing that, helping with that growth. But that's why I'm a part of the chamber, because I believe in it, and the chamber, along with other entities, is what make a county grow. People move to communities based on strong schools and secure communities. And it will be my job to make sure our guys are in zones where we're out in the community, being active with the communities and active in a professional way. They will look professional, they will act professional, and be well trained. Again, our business community really wants to get involved, and it's going to be incumbent upon me to welcome them into the sheriff's department. But most of all, be very open, be sharing of information, and if we make a mistake, guess what? We'll own it, but this is how we will fix it. That's the kind of sheriff I will be to this county. And the challenges that we face.
Thank you, Al. We've got to move on. That was your 3 minutes. I'm sorry to stop you.
You're good.
And just while we're on that, we all make sure y'all can see Tura in your screen, just so y'all can see the signs, please. You can't see her?
She's not in my screen.
Ah, okay. Will you go to gallery view so that you can make sure you can see her? She's holding up those signs for you. And Keith,
I got it now.
all right, Keith, we'll get you unmuted momentarily. All right, you can go ahead with question 1.
All right, thank you. The strengths that I see from the Bryan County Sheriff's Office is kind of mimicking what everyone else said. I believe that the men and women who serve in the Sheriff's Office are the strength, as well as the communities that supports and wants to work with the Sheriff's Office and see it improve. I think where we go from that is we actually build upon those relationships that already exist. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses I see is the lack of standards and leadership to enforce those standards in the Sheriff's Office. For example, officer safety. I've seen many times where officers were not wearing their duty vests. Some of them don't even attend training. And even there's been rumors of deputies sleeping on the duty. These are problems. I believe it's a weakness that we need to fix by instilling standards, holding people accountable, and actually raising the bar of the sheriff's office to have more people or to have a better sheriff's office. Now, when we talk about opportunity, what I see in opportunity is I see the growth of the sheriff's office. I see the sheriff's office actually growing to meet the growing county. The county is growing leaps and bounds in many different directions. I think the growth reflected in the leadership will actually show improvement in training, recruitment, and actually working with other agencies. The challenge that I see as sheriff and in the sheriff's office is actually being part of a bisected county. This is not an easy thing to overcome, but we can. We can do that through establishing community outreach and involvement. We need a sheriff, such as myself, which is willing to bridge the gap and provide standardized service to the whole county. We need to remember that justice is blind. It doesn't matter whether you've been here 1 year or 20 years. Everybody needs to be treated equal regardless. And the last thing I see is threatening to the sheriff's office is the lack of training and complacency in the sheriff's office. I think we need to know, the deputies need to know what the standards are. We need to establish standard operating procedures, and then they need to train to those standards. By doing this, I think we can overcome this threat and move the sheriff's office forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to question 2. We may not often think of it this way, but the sheriff's office is a business. The sheriff will have to run a logistics company and a human resource office. You have to manage finances and a budget, the mental health of your employees, the courts, laws, and so much more. Explain what you think the top 3 business and financial aspects of the sheriff's office are and how you plan to manage those, and how your background prepares you for those things. We will start with Al Hagan. All right, Al, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, the Sheriff's Department really is a business. And you heard one of the candidates say that a 501(c) is a good way of helping, a nonprofit type, allowing businesses to donate. Absolutely, that we must control our budget at all times. That's the driving force of the Sheriff's Department. But guess what? Those funds that you're using is citizens' monies that's paid in. I will make sure that the jail, the Sheriff's Department itself, 911, and the courts are all separate budgets. But we must manage those budgets in a way that we're trying to make sure we number one, be accountable to the citizens with those budgets, and make sure that all monies are spent with respect to making sure it betters our department. I will find ways to make sure we bring revenue streams in. And at a later time, I will talk about specific programs that are there with monies are for our, to help us better run this business that we're talking about. And those are the top 3, being the jail, the courts, and the Sheriff's Department itself. And of course, all 911 and whatever comes, but the jail and the Sheriff's Office budgets are definitely 2 separate budgets for many reasons, because there's things in the jail budget that can't be used in the general budget or the general operating budget. So with that, I will make sure that we are running a good fiscal department like you would if you were spending your household funds. But most of all, be accountable to the citizens and open to the citizens. So if they even want to see a line item, I will make it available to the commissioners to make it available to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Keith, you were up next. Let me get you unmuted.
Unmuted?
You are good to go. Thank you.
There we go. Unfortunately, in law enforcement, no one aspect is greater than the whole. However, if we're taking this analogy of a business, then I believe we can break it down to customer service, logistics, and finances. When we think of customer service, we think of interactions with the people. Those who do that are, for instance, those who serve in the 911 call center, deputies responding to calls, SROs even interacting with kids at the schools. When we think of the logistics, we got to think of the human resource aspects, and we got to think of the equipment. You know, are we providing everything that the deputies and the officers need to do their jobs? And when we think of finances, we need to think of balancing a budget. We need to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. And by doing this, we need to look for grants and different things that we can do to actually fund the department ourselves. Now you ask me, how am I going to manage this? I believe it's just like any other business. You got to have a plan. You got to surround yourself with a strong team. You got to plan for growth, and you've got to constantly reassess to determine where you are and how you're going to improve. Now, when you think about what qualifies a person for the job, you've got to think about life experience. Just because someone says they have 10, 20, 30 years in any particular thing does not mean they can relate to anybody and everybody. The sheriff's office is a service department. We serve people, so that means we interact with different people. We've got to have those skills along with the business skills to actually run the department itself. Myself, I've worked 10 years in law enforcement. I got a good grasp of what goes on in law enforcement. 10 years has given that to me. I've also ran successful businesses. I've ran a business that's actually supported my family, put my wife through veterinarian school. And I've also worked consistently for many, many years with a nonprofit organization that's actually a global church. As part of that nonprofit organization, I was called upon to actually audit several other congregations and to actually clerk for them and see that their finances were good. Like I said, just serving years does not qualify. We have to look at the life of a person to determine whether or not they are actually qualified to give the citizens of the county what they need.
Thank you. Mike Maxwell, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Catherine. I plan on working closely with the Bryan County Commissioners and the County Administrator in the creation of a yearly budget. I will be a good steward of the taxpayers' money. I believe there's 3 ways that we can help our budget. Number 1, I think we can address vehicles and vehicle maintenance. We often run our cars well into 200,000 miles. We buy engines, transmissions, unneeded repairs. What I suggest, we buy cars, take them off the road at 80,000 miles and auction them. Put the money back into the budget so that we save money on maintenance. It's nothing to do with maintenance for oil changes and preventive maintenance, tires and whatnot. But buying unneeded engines and transmissions is something we have to put in the past. Number 2, I think we can actually help our money in our budgets by having a highway interdiction team, which will help supplement our budget. There would be nothing better than to take away the drug money from people who are running up and down on interstates. And it's a great source of revenue, free money to the citizens of Bryan County. I also think we also have to look at the jail as a way to make money. Our jail is getting old and needs to be replaced. I suggest making a 200-bed jail, designating 100 beds for federal inmates, which charge up to $45 a day. Now let's think if we have those 100 beds full, that'd be $4,500 a day to the citizens of Bryan County and to our treasury. I think if we save money with vehicles, use highway interdiction, use our jail to make money, the sheriff's office will operate as a business. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mike. Next up, we have Doug. Doug, you are unmuted. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine. The Sheriff's Department is operated like a business because it is a business. It needs to be run like a business. I have 30 years of experience of running businesses. I commanded over 80 firefighters with a budget of 4 fire stations. I also was in the private sector in upper command of our CID unit over at Richmond Hill, which I was in charge of being one of the individuals to start a narcotics unit, which that entailed much budgeting. The department, excuse me, the agency, the Bryan County agency, it doesn't turn a profit. It doesn't do that. So the sheriff has to work within the budget. Right now, I believe the budget is about $5.2 million, somewhere around there. And the bulk of that budget, around $4.3 million, consists of personnel costs, salaries, insurance, and things of that nature. The remaining money is divided up amongst many other type things like maintenance and fuel and equipment and other things like that. COVID-19 has definitely taken a toll on us. And at this point, we really don't know what the budget is going to look like in the future. There are other avenues that we will be seeking. We definitely will have a grant writer. We'll have an aggressive grant writer, and we will use a grant writer so that we do not use taxpayers' money. We don't know what the budget's going to be. I feel like we need to do a total examination of the budget to be conducted. Equipment purchases as well as contracts need to be examined to see if there could be savings made somewhere. If there can't be, that's perfectly fine. We'll move on, and from there we'll do what we need to do. But I do want to be perfectly clear. Should budgets be cut in any way, the safety of our public and our community and our employees are top priority. Like I said, I have 30 years of experience of doing this, especially at the fire department. And that was a time when budget was tight back then as well. I appreciate it. Thank you. Time's up.
You have 1 more minute.
I couldn't hear you.
You have 1 more minute if you want.
1 more minute. Okay. One more thing that's very important to me, as I talked about this earlier, was officer retention, due to the fact that it is very expensive to replace our fine deputies that we already have. We have very qualified deputies and jailers. We want to see them get advanced training. We want to see them move forward. We are interested in definitely retaining all of the employees that we can that wish to stay. It is very costly to train new officers, train new jailers, train new 911 individuals. That becomes a burden, and it's very costly for the taxpayers. That's one thing that we are definitely going to look at so that we are not burdened with that at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes, ma'am.
Mark, I'm trying to unmute you.
Okay, I think,
Oh,
you hear me?
I can hear you. There you go.
Okay. Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that I was a business owner myself for several years. I ran a small business from 2000 to 2005. I owned and operated the Napa Auto Parts store in Pembroke, Georgia. So I know what it takes to run a successful business. You know, the sheriff is responsible for preparing and managing the sheriff's office budget. So the office of the sheriff must be conducted just as you would run a respectable business, with the exception of making a profit. So there are many facets to the business aspect of the sheriff's office. There are accounts payable, there are accounts receivable, there's the jail inmate fund, commissionary fund, a payroll, inventory, purchasing goods and services. So it must be handled in a respectable and honest way, of course. So I plan to manage and lead, like the quote from Bear Bryant, you surround yourself. He said, somebody asked him, why are you such a good coach, or something about him being such a good coach. And he said, it's not because I'm a great coach, it's because I surround myself with great people. And so I plan, nobody knows every aspect of this job. You can't do every particular part of it. I'm not an accountant, so I would surround myself with good people, with those people that have those skill sets to help me run the sheriff's department and run it respectfully. So, you know, with that being said, you know, you do what you can to stand by a code of ethics that to avoid appearance of favoritism, and surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with those people that can help you move in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mike Fordham, you are unmuted.
Well, I think I concur with everyone else. Budget probably being on the high end of what you have to manage. It's not our money. It doesn't belong to the sheriff's office. It belongs to the citizens who pay those taxes. There are many avenues for funding. I mentioned earlier looking at a foundation, a 501c3 to help offset costs and relieve some of the burden on taxpayers. And somebody else mentioned grants. When I was in the training unit in the GBI, we administered and I actually wrote 3 different grants for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. And then we had to obviously maintain those budgets because they were audited on a quarterly basis. We also had budgets for all 3 divisions of that agency. As the brigade executive officer, I was responsible for the budget of a 4,000 to 6,000 person brigade and everything, all the moving stock and all the everything that we got from the Department of the Army, other than personnel, obviously, which was provided. So there are some funding streams that we can look at. Bryan County Sheriff's Office got the largest budget in the county, the largest payroll in the county. And so it absolutely has to do with running it right. And fortunately, we're audited, and my experience and knowing how to do that ethically and morally and keep folks out of jail for mismanaging a budget of taxpayers' money will certainly be of benefit to the folks in Bryan County. The other thing you had on the question was about mental health, courts, laws, and more. A lot of that stuff, I don't know if you were talking about, if the person who sent in the question was talking about mental health of employees or mental health issues that we deal with at the sheriff's office. For the employees, the county started several years ago during my employment, Employee Assistance Program, EAP, which is part of the salary and benefits for county employees. And that program is probably underutilized because when you look at the EAP programs, we had them in the military, we had them in the state, and there are so many benefits to the employees there. If you're talking about mental health issues with the public, and one of the things I've campaigned on, and I'm a firm believer on, is getting as many people possible trained as part of a crisis intervention team. I had the opportunity to audit that course, and we came back. The director put me in charge of making sure that we got statewide training for officers and agencies that wanted that training. And these folks interact with mental health providers and addiction specialists, and not everybody needs to go to jail. And crisis intervention teams are a way to get people that have mental health issues or addiction issues at the right place at the right time.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we will move on to question 3. How will you work with the 2 city police forces, county commissioners and chairmen, and city councilor and mayor? What is currently working and what will you do differently? We will start with Keith Welch. All right, Keith, you're unmuted.
All right. So I believe the answer to this question is actually in the question. The answer is that I will work with the police forces, the county commissioners, the city councils, the mayor, and even the chairman of the commissioners. It's an important thing to do. We must work with one another. There's got to be that cohesiveness where we help each other and do what we need to do for the benefit of the Bryan County. As law enforcement, let's be honest, nothing's really working. Everyone's kind of keeping to themselves. There's this good old voice system going around. There's contention between the different entities. It's a problem. So the question is, what do we do different? We've got to start communicating with one another. We've got to communicate with other agencies. We've got to build those relationships and make them strong. As a sheriff's office, we got to be transparent in what we're doing. We got to let the communities know this is what we're here for. We're here for you. And we got to hold the sheriff's office accountable for both the good and the bad things. I think part of holding the sheriff's office accountable is actually establishing a IA in the sheriff's office, internal affairs, someone that can actually work investigations when you have complaints against police officers, deputies, anybody. I think it's a good thing. I think when the founding fathers started this country, they instilled checks and balances into the government for a reason. And I think that's what needs to happen with the sheriff's office. There's some good things, but we got to continue the work, and we got to reach out to one another and help each other. So we do have to work with one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. All right, Mike Maxwell, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Catherine. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 24 years. 22 of my 24 years, I've been a lieutenant or captain. And I have been able to reach out to the local police chiefs for different events to help with off-duty parades and different community events and backup. What I plan, since 85% of our crime is substance driven, to work with the local chiefs, not just Pembroke, not just Richmond Hill, but also the Fort Stewart Police, the civilian police, is start a multi-jurisdictional task force. It is a problem that has affected my family. It affects people in this community on a regular basis. We have to do something about the daily drug activity in this county, and to utilize all the local law enforcement in a jurisdictional task force. I will do just that. It is important that we get a handle on this very serious issue, and working along with other governmental agencies, the City of Richmond Hill, the City of Pembroke. Part of my drug corps, which is part of my drug platform, is actually getting funding for tickets, a surcharge off of tickets. So I will have to be able to work together with these different governmental bodies so that we can fund the drug court and different aspects of the drug court for testing and education and whatnot. So I do look forward to working with the different chiefs. But I think the most important thing that we can do is establish our multi-jurisdictional task force, attack the drug problem as one local law enforcement working together to help this community live a safe and prosperous life. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mike. Al, you are up next, and hold on. You are unmuted.
Thank you, Catherine. Here we go. Thank you so much. Yes, of course, I am the person running for sheriff that truly believes in working across all lines with all agencies. I do it now on a regular basis. I'm trying to stay in contact with all agencies. I plan to definitely work with the commissioners. I've talked to commissioners about possibly making this department stronger than ever before. And they are willing to work with us. And so we must at all times not feel that we have to be the alpha male in the room because I'm the sheriff. I must listen sometime as well as tell, this is what I want. It takes listening to communication. Works two ways. It goes out and comes back. If I'm the only one talking, that's not effective communication. So my thing is, I want to make sure we listen to what's going on, do intelligence-based policing. Don't just throw money at programs because it sounds good. My thing is education, intelligence-based, then you do the investigative and arrest aspect of it. But we will have a three-pronged approach that works and that will be inclusive of even down to the road departments. I hear nobody talk about the road department. The cities have great road departments because when we're in a crisis from a storm, who's out there? We need to have a working relationship with those men and women as well. So my whole plan of action is called inclusiveness, and we will have inclusiveness in our sheriff department. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Al. Up next, we have Doug Salbert, and you are unmuted.
Thank you. Catherine, this is a very serious issue, and it is close to my heart, and it's something, should I be elected, that I will address immediately due to the fact it can jeopardize the citizen's safety. And here's the reason why. If you have a city officer and he were to go out to the county, he's not deputized. So one of the first things I would do is I would deputize all of the Richmond Hill Police Department and all of the Pembroke Police Department. That right there in itself would be the community working together and all law enforcement. One of the biggest things for me is we would train together. And what I was talking about earlier about incorporating policy and standards and being and going that route and being accredited is everyone so if the county came out to a city call or the city came into a county call, we would all pretty much be under the same type of policy and procedures, which is very important. I would definitely create an advisory board with the 911 centers. I believe that the 911 center needs to have a advisory board, and everyone should have a stake in that. When I say that, I believe everyone should have an interest. That should be Pembroke, Richmond Hill, and everyone involved. I believe that, so for instance, if there's a call out in the county, well, another thing I want to do is I want to have GPSs in the car. So when our 911 center can see where every vehicle is. So if there's a call out in the county and the closest unit is a Richmond Hill unit, I would want that Richmond Hill unit to respond. The reason is that is for the life and safety of whomever's calling for help, should it be a serious injury or armed robbery or something of that nature. Why should we have to wait for a deputy to come from another area when we may have a Richmond Hill PD officer right there? Dispatch would be, I see that, thank you. Dispatch would be able to see that on their screen, where these vehicles are, and actually dispatch them out. So what I'm saying is you could have a Pembroke city officer go out to the county to assist because there may be an officer or a deputy rather further out. I believe that's very important because we are one county. I don't like the north, the south. I don't like the division of that at all. I think it's unfair. I think the north end gets forgotten about. And this is one way that it will bring us all together, especially when we talk about everyone training together. And that's the Pembroke Police Department, the Richmond Hill Police Department, and Bryan County Sheriffs. If we have an active shooter or something along those lines, we all need to be on the same board. We can't show up with different policies. We can't show up with people not knowing what to do. They need to train together. And should I be elected, I promise you, that is what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Mike Fordham, you're up next and you're unmuted.
Thank you so much. You know, everybody makes a good point. Criminal justice systems, law enforcement, and district attorney's officers no longer can operate in a stovepipe kind of environment. It's a collaborative effort among not just the agencies within this county, and as someone pointed out, we're home to the largest military Army reservation east of the Mississippi River. So, you know, I think the provost marshal and the law enforcement personnel over there have to be included in this because it is a collaborative effort. And Doug brought out a great point. You know, when there's if one of the things that I do worry about is an active shooter situation, whether it be active shooters taking on a new life of not just schools, but also corporate headquarters. And everybody's going to respond, whether it's Richmond Hill Police Department, GBI, Georgia State Patrol, everybody's going to go. Well, it'd be nice if we all got there and knew what the other guy was going to do. And if you've been through any of that training or observed any of that training, some of the missteps along the way in our nation has been because everybody's going to respond. And so we need to have a plan. That plan might go out the door once we hit the ground, but we've got to have a plan and we need to work together. My time at the sheriff's office, everybody, you know, from where I was sitting, we routinely work well with the both agencies, the Pembroke Police Department, the Richmond Hill Police Department, shared information, Department of Family and Children Services reports, all of the things that are coming into your sheriff's office. And one of the great things we did when I was a special agent in charge of the Savannah Regional Drug Enforcement Office is we had a monthly, it was called a chiefs meeting, but it was actually all the agency heads from in Chatham County and their command staff personnel and federal and state agencies as well were invited to that, as well as the district attorney's office, because we have to all be in sync. And even though employees are working well together, the command staff and the heads of these agencies, we've got to be on the same sheet of music. And I think Al said, you know, there is no one person more important than the other person there. We're all in this together. I hate to use that term. It's kind of trite right now, but we're truly in this all together. Criminals, you know, they don't know any county boundaries or whatever. And so we have to be on the same sheet of music. So I would reach out, and I would like to institute a monthly breakfast. You know, at church we used to say, if you feed them, they'll come. And so have chiefs and agency heads, the district attorney's office, federal and state agency heads in our surrounding county come together and meet. It's hard to get mad at somebody when you just sat down and had some good old country sausage and grits and eggs with them. So those are some things I'd like to see done.
Thank you. All right, Mark, you are up. Let me get you unmuted here. You're
Okay.
Go ahead.
Catherine, I happen to have a really good relationship with both police chiefs, the mayor of Richmond Hill and the mayor of Pembroke, the fire chiefs, county commission chairman, and each commissioner. I've spoken with them several times, and like Al said earlier, they're more than willing and ready to get behind the next sheriff to make sheriff's department the best it can be. As sheriff, I will work hand in hand with the other agencies, each department and its leaders, to share information, equipment, personnel. And I feel that if there's a good working relationship between the sheriff's department and each police department or each agency, that we can accomplish much more than what we have in the past. I don't think right now that the relationship is very good. Like Keith said, you know, there's a lot that we can do to improve that. Like Al said, we need to sometimes we need to just listen. Yeah, we don't need to be the one to speak as much. You know, we need to take other people into consideration, and so I hope that we can train on a regular basis, like Doug said. Good idea. Bring everybody to the table. EMS, fire. In the case of a catastrophic event, like Mike said, you know, we need to have, everybody needs to know what their part is. When we show up to a scene, we need to know what our part is. They need to know what their part is. We need to work together. We saw that in New York. If you work closely with, I know Doug was there, but when a lot of the agencies showed up, they didn't know what their part was. So you show up there, you get in the way, you don't know what you're there for. So we need to definitely work together with EMS and fire to get a better understanding of what our roles are in an event, catastrophic event, a hurricane, active shooter, whatever it might be. So that we do show up there, we can help one another, not hinder each other in our duties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We will move on to question 4. Pretty broad, so we'll just jump right in. What do you think is the most important role of the sheriff, and why? So we are going to start with Doug on this one. Doug, I've got you unmuted. You can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I believe the most important role of the sheriff is he is a leader. He's the community leader, and he is tasked with obviously protecting our citizens. Right now, I am building a command staff that these individuals, they all have individual talents, life experiences, training, education in different fields to come together. A sheriff can't possibly know everything. And surrounding yourself with good qualified people, that is what will help this community and move us forward. There's a lot involved, obviously training, equipment, policies, procedures, funding, human resources, unfortunately politics, we all know that. But really what's most important to me is being community oriented. Like I said earlier, I do not like the division of the North and South. I feel like we should have, and I will have, quarterly meetings with our command staff, with church leaders, business owners, You know, we need to know what's going out there, and obviously residents, you know, homeowners. Are we getting burglaries over here that we need to go to, or commercial burglaries, or things of that nature? We will address that, and I think it's very important that we involve the churches part of these meetings that we have. I feel it's very important that this community comes together. Like I said earlier, I know I've said it several times, I'm not trying to repeat myself, but the North and South, we need to come together. The North should be policed no differently than the South. The South should be policed. Everyone should be treated the same. And it goes back to training. I feel like it's the sheriff's responsibility to bring everyone together because he is the sheriff. And I feel that burden is rest upon him to be able to bring everyone together, say fire, EMS, and all those individuals. Yes, ma'am. And I have done that. I have done that in the past, and I will do that again. I feel it's necessary that working with the fire department is as important as working with Richmond Hill Police Department or EMS, because like some of the other candidates said, when you get on a scene, everyone needs to be trained to be able to know what to do. We could use fire trucks to block roads, so we can use officers to be able to go into an active shooter situation. We can have tactical EMS personnel assisting us. But back to what I originally said, and I know I got to get off, back to what I originally said is, I believe this is on the sheriff's shoulders to be able to bring this community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes, ma'am.
Up next, we have Mark Crow. You are unmuted. You can go ahead.
Like Doug said, I see the sheriff position of sheriff as a prominent leader in the community. I keep hearing the sheriff's power. To me, it's all about leadership. It's leadership. You know, the sheriff should be one who is involved in every aspect of the community. Al mentioned earlier from the guy at the road department, you know, from the smallest part of whatever it is in the community to the greatest challenge, the sheriff needs to be a part of that. He should be involved in the school system, involved in the construction, not necessarily the construction work, but in the construction of the roadways and whatever it takes to alleviate the traffic. You know, the sheriff has to be a good leader of people, and his leadership, of course, you know, working with the other members of the community, the other leaders in the community, like you know, the fire chiefs and the school system, as I mentioned earlier. He is, of course, the highest law enforcement officer in the county, but that's not all there is to being a sheriff. I believe it's just being available to people in the public and being engaged with other law enforcement officials and being involved in the community at every step. You know, parades, just any event that happens in the city of Richmond Hill or the city of Pembroke. I know you can't be at everything, but be engaged with the community. You know, that's the thing I see, and be that great leader to the department. You know, the people that look up to you, look out for those guys and those gals, and try to, you know, just try to be the best you can be. So, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Mike Maxwell, you are unmuted.
Thank you. As we all know, the sheriff is a constitutional officer. He's the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the county, and it comes with a great responsibility. He must uphold the Constitution of the United States. He must uphold the Constitution of Georgia. But more importantly, he has to maintain a safe environment, upholding and watching out for the personal property of the citizens and making it as safe as possible environment to raise our families in. It is up to the sheriff to create policies that will reach out to the school board and to the different governmental agencies that he's going to be working along with. It's up to the sheriff to develop a plan to ensure kids get to school safely, to ensure they're safe on a playground, to ensure property while they're at work is safeguarded. It is incumbent upon the sheriff to work with everyone, the fire departments and and different entities. As your sheriff, I will reach out to different community leaders and ensure a plan for growth that we can address all of these issues. Bryan County has been my home. It is important, just as I was a father keeping my children safe, that we keep our community safe. And that's what I plan on doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Keith, you're up next and you're unmuted.
All right. So what I think is the important role of the sheriff's office is that the sheriff needs to lead by example. The sheriff needs to, for himself, maintain a high individual standards. He needs to have integrity. He needs to treat others as equals. And he needs to work with the other government agencies. I think sometimes the sheriff's office gets undermanned and things like that. It's in these cases where the sheriff himself needs to step in and fill roles. It might mean that the sheriff is a jailer one night or a deputy on the road the next night. You need a sheriff that's willing to do what's best for the sheriff's office. And ultimately, I think Bryan County wants a sheriff who does the right thing when faced with impossible choices, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Up next, we have Mike Fordham. You are unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Catherine. You know, the role of the sheriff has changed throughout history. But the best way I know to describe it is, and some of my colleagues have alluded to this, is it's a servant leader. You know, I've heard some county commissioners and some other citizens say, well, the sheriff ought to be appointed by the county commissioner board. I disagree. The sheriff serves the citizens of the county where they're elected. I teach criminal justice classes over at Savannah Technical College, have been for quite some time. And some might think this is corny, and some might say I'm living in the past. And certainly technology has changed and times have changed, and we live in a lot bigger community than Mayberry. But when you watch the Andy Griffith Show, that's a pretty good example of a sheriff. That's servant leadership. And I tell those students, if you want to see what law enforcement is supposed to be about, watch that show. You can watch all these other shows and kind of get led down a primrose path. A long time ago, when I wanted to be a deputy sheriff, before I ever went to work with the state of Georgia, I was friends with an old guy who was a deputy sheriff. And he said, you know, there's a lot of difference between policing and sheriffing. And he was right then, and he would be right now. Sheriff's got many irons in the fire, jails, courts, and is elected by the citizens of the county they serve in. You know, sometimes a warning is a lot more effective than a ticket and in serving the citizens of the county. Sheriffs today are faced with what we call in the military wicked problems, where you have two choices, both of them bad. And you have to have the foresight to look past beyond the immediate problem and say, okay, who is this going to affect? And is the best benefit for all part of the decision we make? One of the things I've watched sheriffs do in many counties of the state is to be the sense of reason and the person that kind of takes a deep breath and says, okay, how is this going to affect not just the individual, but how's it going to affect the individual's family? You know, good people do bad things sometimes. And when people go to jail, my experience has been, and my personal experience has been, it's the family that suffers. It's the family that really pays the price and has the frustration and the embarrassment and the worry about having a family member in jail. And all that goes towards servant leadership. And insofar as employees go, as Al talked about, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mike. Up next, we have Mr. Al Hagen. Let me get you unmuted. There you go. You can go ahead, Al.
Catherine. Yes, the sheriff is a very powerful position in this county, but you can't look at it as a position. You look at it as an opportunity to serve citizens and protect those who can't protect themselves. The worst thing the sheriff can do is be part of re-victimization of a victim. I will be a leader in this county who will, number one, institute an internal affairs division it comes below the sheriff. I will have the final say in the decision made, but I should not be involved until the investigation is completed. So I'm not clouded by what I think or may think have happened. So implementing a program only as good as you allow it to operate properly. It must be ran properly. And given the people that you bring around you in leadership, the opportunity to lead and do. Troops reflect their leaders. And if you're a strong leader, you will have strong troops. And those troops will serve with pride, integrity, and which I've always tried to do in my community. I was once reminded I'm not perfect, but I work every day for perfection. And in the sheriff's department, I promise to serve people with integrity, honesty, openness, because the sheriff is looked to fix a lot of issues. And a lot of times he's not really looking to fix it. People just want someone to say, I need to talk to the sheriff, and have the sheriff to listen. Have some empathy for what's going on, because you never know why that person is in the situation they're in. But I think the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And I would love to serve as the sheriff of Bryan County for that reason. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Al. All right, we'll move on to our last official question. As many people know, Bryan County has the highest opioid prescribing rate compared to our surrounding areas. What are your specific plans in dealing with the opioid issue in Bryan County? And the first person to respond is Mark Crow. Mark, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Well, Catherine, this is kind of right up my alley, because I worked in drug enforcement and drug interdiction for a long period of time, removing kilograms of cocaine and bales of marijuana off of Interstate 95 for years. I worked in an undercover status as well, dealing with street level drugs and drug dealers. And so I've got I feel like I have a little bit more knowledge than maybe some on the levels of drugs, drug work, drug interdiction, what it would take to combat that in our communities. What some people may not know is that we do have a drug court. It's an Atlantic Judicial Circuit that serves Bryan County. It's already in service. It's over in Liberty County. It's run by Superior Court Judge Jay Stewart. It's operated by the Drug Abuse Treatment Education Fund, which is attached to the citations already that come through Bryan County. Anyway, you just presented the answer, Catherine, in the question, just as Keith spoke of earlier. I think the way to combat this opioid epidemic, the prescribing the drugs in our county, is to go after those who are prescribing the drugs in our county. So I would work hand in hand with the DEA, the GBI, our own in-house drug unit to weed out, to find, to locate those pill mills, those physicians, those pharmacies, those people who are writing these fictitious prescriptions, falsified, illegal prescriptions, whatever you want to call it. Locate those people, do whatever we have to do, arrest them, warn them, make them move out of our communities. And once these places are identified, you just have to go in and try to get these folks out of our area. One thing about it, it's not just up to the law enforcement in this area to to take care of this problem. We have to have community support. We need the people in the community to get behind this and to tell us where these places are, tell us what's going on, and help us in getting rid of those people, and bringing those statistics down, and educating and rehabilitating people, incarcerating those, like I said, that we may have to incarcerate. But Henry Ford once said, and I'll make this quote, working together is success. So we have to work together. The citizens of Bryan County have to work with law enforcement to make this happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Keith, you're up.
All right. I think in addressing this problem, I think the first thing we really need to understand is you cannot arrest the problem away. More importantly, the drug epidemic that we're facing is not unilateral. There are many different avenues that are involved with the drug epidemic that we're facing. It affects not only the people who are doing the drugs, but it affects the families that they are part of. For that reason, my plan includes a multifaceted approach. I want to include substance abuse prevention. I want to continue some of the things that we're doing in the middle schools and the high schools, like the CHAMPS program or the SAD program. The CHAMPS is choosing healthy activities and method, and the SAD program in the high school is basically students against destructive behavior. I also want to be able to promote programs that promote mental health and recovery sources, such as the Bryan County Opioid Prevention Project. I'm loving what the fire department's doing with the Safe Haven program. And I believe that we should add more to that. We should, anything that we can promote or at least advocate for, we should be doing as a sheriff's office for recovery and mental health. And as we turn to the jails, we can do the same thing in the jails. Georgia State prisons right now have a program called the Matrix Program for early recovery. I think we should look at a program similar to that for our jails here in Bryan County and help these people get the help they need. One of the last things I'd like to do is I'd like to establish a multi-jurisdictional task force whose mission is to identify, analyze emerging drug problems. This includes looking at the hotels, what's going on, what kind of trends are happening in the area, looking at the homeless, and even working with SROs in the schools to see what the kids are getting into these days. I think the second part of that mission should be that we should develop effective responses to immediate threats to security of the county. And that includes things such as gangs. We have a huge gang problem in Bryan County. It needs to be addressed along with the drug problem because that's where the drugs are coming from. I think we also need to implement short and long-term interdiction plans. This basically means that we're going to fulfill the first two parts of the mission, but we're also going to work with the DEA and ATF to see that we're actually getting these criminals away for a longer periods of time. And ultimately, we need to do more training with our officers. We need to make sure they're trained in gangs and also maybe even get a K-9 so that we can do interdiction with narcotics on the interstate and actually helping out with the schools and the Board of Education. The thing is we need to approach this not unilaterally. We need to approach it from all sides to tackle it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Next, we have Mike Fordham. You're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Yeah, drug enforcement. I spent most of my career in the GBI assigned to drug enforcement units and supervising drug enforcement units in Southeast Georgia. We had 33 counties and 3 different sub-offices out of the Savannah office. You know, the opioid addiction problem is not something that just snuck up on us. The Bryan County Opioid Prevention Project is one that early on, when it was first established, I went and met with the folks that were there on grant funding monies to stand that thing up because of the high rate of opioid addiction here in Bryan County. That's gone down some from what it was 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when we first started up. But opioid addiction, drug enforcement, period, I think you always have to have a two-prong approach. One, you've got to have prevention education, and we have that now in the Bryan County schools at the 5th grade level. But there's got to be some follow-on with that. You know, we don't teach math in the 5th grade and don't teach it for the rest of the high school and junior high. There are curriculums for middle school and high school because the skill sets become different as these students move forward in their education. The other part of that is enforcement. And we absolutely have to work with other agencies because drug enforcement is not a stovepipe issue. Bryan County Sheriff's Office is a member of the Southeast Regional Drug Enforcement Office now, which is all of those agencies came together and formed a large agency. The Sheriff's Office has one deputy assigned over there. We're also a member of the Shadow Narcotics team. Part of the plan I have based on funding streams, and if we get the funding and identify funding, is to increase those positions from what they are. Bryan County doesn't have to inherit all of those expenses. With the state of Georgia and surrounding areas having teams that we can be a part of for no more than the salary of the deputy assigned to it. If you want to stand up a whole new team just for Bryan County, that's a burden on the taxpayers. And you're already paying tax money for these other entities, the Southeast Regional Drug Enforcement Office and other federal and state agencies. Plus, we've got to work with them anyway. So it's a comprehensive approach. It's not something that you can do in a vacuum. I've got 25 plus years in working drug enforcement. I was past president of the National Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, stood up the DARE program when it was popular in Georgia, and those programs have a life cycle. But prevention education is key, and giving these students skill sets that they'll need to stay drug free. The Opioid Prevention Project's done an outstanding job of making people aware of the problem.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Maxwell, you're up and you're unmuted.
Thank you. This is something I'm passionate about. I've had family members who have had opioids addiction. I understand how it tears apart a family. I understand what a family has to go through to get over this problem, which is why I have suggested a multi-jurisdictional task force so that we can address the daily drug activity that goes on in this community. 85% of our crime is substance driven, and we have to do something about it. Now, I'm for a drug and alcohol court in Bryan County simply for local control so that we can add a third plank onto that court for long-term rehabilitation. How do we pay for it? I will work with the City of Pembroke, the City of Richmond Hill, and the Bryan County Commissioners to have a $25 surcharge placed on our traffic tickets and other cases that go through our court system. We could probably raise $300,000. Why is that important? We can hire a coordinator. We can have a steering committee which will set guidelines for our own court for our own community needs. We can have education aspects of it where we have peer-to-peer counseling, and we can have mentorship so that we can reach kids at a younger level in middle school and in the elementary schools so we can possibly get them off the avenue of drug use. We can even set up a hotline in Bryan County so they can call someone if they feel the need to self-medicate. The reason why for local control is so we can identify people who may have failed, and we can offer them an opportunity to get better, offer them an opportunity for long-term rehabilitation. Many times an insurance program will only give 30 days. That's not enough. It takes time for addiction to work into a human. It has to take time to work it out. When we offer long-term rehabilitation, we're offering families hope. When we save one person, we save a family. When we start saving families, we make our community better. When we make our community better, our crime rate will go down. The reason why I'm for local control is so that we can help our families here in Bryan County. It is something I'm passionate about, and it's something that gets me a lot of attention because everyone always reminds me about Judge Stewart. But I will work hand in hand with Judge Stewart to create and advocate for a drug and alcohol court here in Bryan County so that we can have a community approach to our community problem. I'm going to be that sheriff who reaches out to the community for consensus so that we can solve problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Al, you're up next and you're good to go.
Thank you, Ms. Catherine. This is very much in my wheelhouse. I don't like, it's hard to brag on myself. I'm uncomfortable doing it, but I will tell you I've had a very successful career in drug enforcement. We must, as I talked about earlier, approach drugs at a with a three-prong approach. That's one being education, education, of course, intelligence-based, and also true enforcement. And I agree with Mike. We have the mechanisms in place, but we must use them. I've worked and was received Agent of the Year and also Case of the Year on two of the biggest drug cases in this state, Operation River Sweep and Operation Big Deal. And so I was recognized for my work in that, understanding how to put together teams. And those cases were OCDEF cases, with organized crime, drug enforcement task force cases. And those take multiple agencies from IRS to FBI, DEA, and the local agencies were involved in those cases. And I managed those cases while it was ongoing, and some of them lasted well over a year. And so there was a lot of making sure undercover agents, or I played undercover roles in one of those cases. So a lot of that is showing that I have the ability to truly go after the drug dealers. But like you say, it's more to drugs than just the enforcement aspect. You got to educate, but you got to share information. The DEA tracks all the opioids that goes into these doctors' offices, but we locally have to do things such as surveillance. When you see a bunch of cars coming from out of county to one small pharmacy, that should tell you something, that you have a problem there. So that intelligence alone gives you something to work with. So it's going to be incumbent upon me as the sheriff to continue to put together the people in place who are aggressively, do not suffer from energy crisis, but willing to get out and do what's right. You will hear me probably, other than what Mike just said, I will not have a local drug task force because they're burdensome to the county's budget. And if you do your homework, you will find that they become corruptive, internally corruptive. You don't have to go no further than Brunswick, Georgia, and see some of the ones are just locked up because of failure to manage those drug task force. And so I'll talk more about that, and so you'll truly understand why those one county task force does not work, or they may work for a while. So it would be, I will continue as sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now we have Doug. Let me. Mark up. There you go. All right, you're good to go now.
Thank you. The opioid crisis, it affects almost every family. As many of you know, I have family members who, struggle with opioid addiction, and it's true to my heart, like like some of the other people here. And you don't know in the middle of the night if that phone call is going to be your loved one possibly overdosed or something of that nature. I agree with everybody here. Keith, I agree greatly with what Keith says. I was the CID commander, which you guys heard that. I had 3 very aggressive narcotics detectives that worked with us. We started that unit. I wouldn't be wasting taxpayers' money. I know what we did wrong. I know what worked, and it worked very well. You cannot arrest the problem away. We know that. I've said before in our videos, all deputies will be trained as first responders. They all will have Narcan, definitely. First have to save we have to save our life. We have to save their lives first before we can help them. We've all talked about the alternative courts and things of that nature. I will have a canine unit for narcotics to work those high crime areas. That will be, for sure. But I do kind of disagree with some of the things that are saying, and I know it's not a debate, and I'm sorry, guys. the narcotics thing for me, when you have them working in your own area, you have a little bit more control. And for us, at least when I was over it, it worked. We were able to follow up and get people help and things of nature, like Keith said. And Keith, still works for that agency, and I don't know his ideas, but for me, it does work. And we will have that. Should I be elected? There again, you got to be proactive. Everything like Mr. Fordham said in reference to the 5th grade and moving on up and things of that nature. So yes, you have to be proactive. Yes, ma'am, I see that. But there again, there's not a family that doesn't go by that has a family member that's been have the burden of another family member or friend who is self-medicating. There's nothing worse than sitting at your desk having someone across from you crying in regards to a family member self-medicating, and everything they're saying, you want to reach out and help them. And there are programs out there, like Al and some of the other guys said. So this is one of our, and whoever gets elected, I hope, if it's not me, that you guys address this like you're saying, because I do have family members here and they do need help. And I do have grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren that are being raised in this area. So, it's very important that who's ever elected is not just saying this, but they go through with what they're saying. And of course, on the back side of that is funding. We haven't even talked about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes, ma'am.
We will now move into closing responses. Because we are looking okay on time, I'm going to give y'all 2 minutes so that you can give your closing response. This is just for you to say whatever you felt like the questions did not address. And the order of response, we will start with Al Hagan. Al, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, again, thank you, Catherine. Thank you to all the citizens that took time out of their busy afternoon to listen to what we had to say. One thing I wanted to I glossed over, wanted to go back. I will work to implement a junior deputy program starting in our middle school, because it builds integrity in the young men and women. Plus, it also builds our future police officers to make that they will want to stay home, or I help groom them to go off to the federal system. But I will work to help our youth get where they want to be. I'm asking for your vote because I want to be your next sheriff, because I love this county. If you look at my history, I've worked diligently with the kids of this community. I've worked to get scholarships through sports. The best thing is I have a great relationship in the community. When crimes occur, I'm sitting home at night, my phone rings. And a lot of times, and I'm not in law enforcement at this time, but a lot of times, once receiving that information, I'll call the officers on duty, whomever, and relay that information to, because the people trust me in this community. And I will continue to keep their trust and not violate their trust in any way. I'm available to talk to you. One of the big issues is the Constitution. People worry about me running as a Democrat in the Constitution. I will gladly talk to you anytime, anywhere, and share my feelings about the First and Second Amendment. But I will advise you to beware of the 4th, 5th, 8th, and 14th, because those are violated every day. And I will ask you to make sure that whatever sheriff you elect, make sure he protect those as well. Thank you. You can reach me at 912-682-3338. And I look forward to sitting down with any citizen that would want to talk with me. I will come to you, because I will be a full-time sheriff, and Central Georgia Polygraph will not be a part of the Sheriff's Department. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Al.
Excellent.
All right. Up next, we have Doug. You are unmuted, Doug. You've got 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to thank everybody for everything that they've done to help us here, each and every one of us. There's one thing I want to address we didn't have time to, is the SROs in the schools. It's very important to me that the SROs, that is addressed. Obviously, at this time, we can't go out and hire, 10 SROs for each school. one of the ideas that we have is once we put computers in our cars, what we want to do is have our deputies go to those schools in the parking lots or in the schools and do the report writing there. Make their rounds around, introduce themselves to the kids, introduce themselves to the teachers. Obviously, they'll know what's going on. We'll work very closely with the school board, but I think it's very important that we address the issue of our deputies being visible at our schools. Since at this point, we cannot obviously put deputies at every school because we don't have the funding, we have to grow into that. And so that's like, that's like what I was saying. I believe yes, ma'am. I believe to address that immediately, once we get in, we'll have our deputies go to those areas, do the reports on their computers there, which, we're talking about, we didn't even talk about any of that. But anyway, go there, do their report writing, and that in itself will help protect our children at this time. I want to say thank you very much for your time, and please vote for me. I would love to be our sheriff. I think we can move this thing forward, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Up next, we have Mike Maxwell. You're unmuted. You can go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Catherine. I'd like to thank you and the chamber and everyone working behind the scenes there tonight for putting on this forum for the candidates. I'd like to thank each candidate here that has come out tonight, and we've shared ideas. We shared our visions and where we'd like to see the sheriff's office go. It's been an honor to serve the citizens of Bryan County for 24 consecutive years. I just want you to know that as your sheriff, I will do the best job that I can. I will be a leader that you'll be proud of. I will provide fair and principled leadership that the office of the sheriff demands and that you deserve. 24 years of dedicated service, 24 years of experience at the sheriff's office. I have the dedication and the experience that the office of the sheriff demands and that you deserve. I ask for your vote June 9th to elect me the next sheriff of Bryan County. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking your time out this evening. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mike. Up next, we have Keith. All right, Keith, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I also would like to thank Catherine and Tura and everyone else over there at the Bryan County Chamber of Commerce for putting this on and taking your time from your families to do this for us, and let Bryan County know a little bit more about each and every one of us. One thing I believe strongly in, I believe that if we constantly set the bar at the height that's required, then we're never really going to reach our full potential. I believe that the sheriff office needs to raise the bar. The sheriff needs to raise the bar. We need to do all that we can do. We need to take advantage of every opportunity. We need to set standards in the sheriff's office. And more importantly, the sheriff needs to have standards himself. Listen, Bryan County, I'm running for sheriff. I want to be your sheriff. And I'll be happy to meet with anybody and talk with anybody about the plans that I have for the future of our county. It's kind of like here, we only have a few minutes to say a few things. There's so much more. And I'd like to talk to each and every one of you about it. I'd like to share those things with you. If you'd like to talk about it, find me on my website or feel free to call me. Number is 432-1045. Keith Welch for Sheriff.
Thank you. Up next, we have Mike Fordham. Mike, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Catherine, thank you again, and the chamber, everyone at the chamber, so much for putting this forward. I know it's been a nut roll to try to get it all together. You know, your sheriff does a lot of different things, as you've seen tonight. We're responsible by Georgia law to secure the courts and the courthouse annex, the security and safety and health of inmates that may be housed in your county jail. Law enforcement is one of the things we're responsible for in Bryan County, and that includes investigations and drug enforcement. The E911 Center also comes up under your sheriff's office, which is a huge responsibility. You have a sex offender registry that is an unfunded mandate that the Georgia General Assembly gave to the sheriff several years ago. And it's likely with budget cuts that there will be more unfunded mandates that Georgia sheriffs are responsible for. You've got a lot of resources in your sheriff's office. I promise I'll be a good steward of those resources. And I promise I'll be a friend of the citizens of Bryan County and accessible to you. I've managed large organizations. I've been commander. I've been supervisor of large drug task forces and drug enforcement units, and had the opportunity that you afforded me to work and serve at our state and federal level. And that's why I'm running for sheriff. You know, for the last 10 years after 9/11, your reserve components business picked up, and we started doing combat tours. I've had the opportunity to do one in Iraq and Afghanistan, and fortunately survived both. While I was away, and when I was working in Atlanta at the Georgia General Assembly and doing legislative liaisons stuff, the citizens of Bryan County took care of my family. My son is a success story in spite of his daddy, and it's a large part because of our community. Please vote for me. I'll do you a good job.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Mark, you are our last one for closing statements. And you can go ahead.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you, Catherine and Tura, for hosting 6 nervous sheriff's candidates in the first virtual forum. Something I've never been involved in before, of course. But I think it went very well, and thank you so much for the chamber for putting this on. Like I said earlier, I have been a leader in this community for a long, long time. I've led Little League. I've served in the church. I've served at cure functions, Relay for Life. You name it. Someone asked me to be there, I'm there. I've sung at many funerals. I've been pallbearer for many folks in the area here. I want to be a servant. I want to be that servant leader that Mike Fordham talked about. I don't like the word power. I just can't. I can't let that get into my head that the sheriff's position is power, all about power. And I just want to be that servant leader, that good leadership that Bryan County deserves. The members of the Bryan County Sheriff's Department deserve a good leader. They deserve an honest leader, one that's full of integrity, and one that's that's looking out for them and not for self. One that can put their ego aside and bow down and do the dirtiest of the jobs, the lowest of the low, the trench. Get in the trench and work with the guys. Someone mentioned that earlier. I want to be that person that takes off the sheriff badge and gets in the trenches with the guys, puts it back on and runs the department. That's the guy I want to be. And I ask you for your vote. Of course, early voting is going on now. June 9th is the election. May 30th is the Saturday voting. And I ask for your support. Come out and vote. It's your right, but we need you to come out and vote. Each candidate here needs you to come out and vote. And I thank you so much for your time. Vote Mark Crow.
Thank you, Mark. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for taking 2 hours out of your evening to come and talk to us and answer these questions that our community sent in. I know y'all have been very busy men, and I want to thank you for what you're stepping up to do. I know this is not easy for you or your families, and so I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank the community for tuning in. We hope that this was able to educate you so that you are now able to go and vote in a smart and informed way. We are recording this, so we will be posting this on our YouTube page so that you can go back and watch it if you weren't able to join us live, or if you weren't able to watch the whole thing. We will share that on our Facebook page as well. So we hope y'all were able to get good information, good quality information directly from the candidates this evening. As Mark mentioned, early voting has started. It is now through June 5th. For the North End, you are still voting at the courthouse in the commissioner's office or room. And then for South Bryan, your early voting has changed. So it is now at the Timber Trail Rec Gym. So if you go down Timber Trail, it's the rec center that's in there. They've actually just voted on Monday. So everyone's got masks on. You're very safe if you feel uncomfortable. Also just want to remind you, if you did do an absentee ballot due to COVID-19 and you now have decided that you would rather vote in person, you must take your ballot with you to turn it in if you would rather vote in person. They also have the new voting machines, so just be prepared for that. They are very easy to use, but it is a little different than what we have been voting on. And then again, the election day is on Tuesday, June 9th. For more information about the election, you can visit the Bryan County, Georgia website on their website. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your evening. I want to thank Tura for being our timekeeper tonight. And I want to thank all of y'all for keeping us on time. I appreciate that. I know everyone is so busy. So I hope you all have a great evening. And if the community, if y'all ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Chamber. We are still working remotely right now, but you can always call or email us. Our information is on our Facebook page. So hope you have a great night and great rest of the week. And we will see you around town hopefully soon. Thank you.